Nothing in this podcast is meant for medical advice. Please discuss your own healthcare with your healthcare providers. Thank you. Welcome to your B-side, your midlife metamorphosis. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Lindsey. Midlife is not a crisis, it's a catalyst to your best life. Join me each week for a dose of mental, physical, and spiritual health, life, grief, adventure, and opportunity. It's time to flip the record over. Self-trust, your single biggest dial mover for your health and your life in midlife. Welcome to your B-side, your midlife metamorphosis with me, your host, Dr. Amy Lindsey. Today, we're going to talk about how using external validation for your life and your health and your decisions creates a life of struggle. So what is self-trust? So self-trust is something that I try to cultivate in all of my clients. I try to cultivate this in my children. I try to cultivate this in my friends and anyone I know. And I especially am constantly working on cultivating it in myself. So self-trust is an unwavering internal conviction about your own needs and desires, value, self-worth, abilities, your creative expression, and your connection to that intuition and higher self. The ability to know that you can rely on yourself and no one else and have that confidence. That's true confidence. So many of us are taught to believe that we have to push against a status quo, right? And whether or not you conform or rebel against this status quo, you're giving that status quo power. Does that make sense? So if you are conforming to it, you're saying this is a thing I need to do and adopt because I need this external validation. I don't trust myself. Or you're rebelling against it, but you're putting all this energy and rebellion against something and also giving it power. But what if we step off that game? What if we step off that status quo or rebellion to status quo and we actually just create our lives? And we do it through a conviction of self-trust. So why is this hard? Because this is difficult for a lot of people. It is really hard to sort of create your own inner bubble with yourself for a minute and just try to check in and slow down and try to find that voice inside yourself and to trust yourself with big decisions or even small decisions or even little things throughout your day. Why is it so hard? I would say the number one reason is not so much that we want to be liked by other people, but because we're afraid to fail. And that failure might expose our shame. Failure might expose our shame. And then we might be witnessed or seen in our failure and shame and mistakes by other people, which usually shows up as a feeling of embarrassment. So embarrassment is a huge, powerful emotion. People do not like to be embarrassed. Embarrassment has all the markings of fear, of vulnerability, of stress, of showing weakness, of failure. But here's the thing. We all know this intellectually, that failure isn't really a thing, right? Like failure is how we learn and it's part of success because it's in succession to the next thing, right? If we make a mistake or we fail, that we're actually learning some valuable information so that we can then pivot and make different decisions. But this is why people don't trust themselves and they don't trust themselves to do something against what might seem logical, what might seem the best intellectual thing to do, or might be against status quo. This is side A thinking. If we're talking about our B side of our life, this is side A. This is what we did when we were young because it was really important for us to stay safe in our group, right? We did this when we were young. And even when we were teenagers or young adults, we felt like our rebellion was our individuality, but really we were still rebelling against a status quo. To completely step outside of that and to understand that you're a creator of your life is a huge, huge accomplishment.
Ever notice how weird we are about our health and our money? We are over here counting numbers for both and in a vicious cycle that is taking us from our joy. It's time to break this cycle. Join me for Wealth, WELLTH, a 3-part masterclass to illuminate how your relationship to your health matches your relationship to abundance. Go to dramylindsey.com/wealth. That's DRAMYLINDSEY.com/WELLTH to learn more.
So let's talk about the voices in our head. What voice are you listening to? Okay. So I'll give you some ideas, right? Some of the voices in our head are our inner critic. It's that self-doubt. So we have in our brains what's called our default mode network, okay? And the point of this part of our brain is actually for self-reflection. It's for taking in information in a sense of awe and wonder. It's that time and space for reflection. But what can happen in the default mode network is we can over worry and start being super critical of ourselves. And when we start doing that, then the default mode network like really drives into that negativity and that inner critic. And you can actually wire ruts in your brain that just go inner critic. You can't do it. You're not good enough. Nope. Right? And so when you're trying to listen to yourself and get into that self-trust, that inner critic comes in. Okay. So that's one of the voices in your head. Another voice in your head could be a parent or a caregiver, someone who raised you. And those voices are in your head all the time because you heard them when you were very young and they just became part of you, part of your being. Perhaps it was an experience, and it could be a positive experience or a negative experience when you were younger, and it was a coach or it was a teacher or it was some religious leader or authority figure. And it could have been a positive experience, but they reinforced something, a belief that you now are questioning, right? And at the time it served you well, but now in midlife, in your 40s, your 50s, this isn't going to serve you anymore, right? It doesn't belong, but it's still there. So it has you question yourself because you're still listening to that voice. Perhaps the voice you're listening to is that sort of higher self of yours, that intuition. And that's the one we want to hone in on. That's the one that develops self-trust. And the more you listen to it, and then the more you get the evidence that it was the right thing to do to listen to yourself, you build that confidence. So we get this sense of flow state and ease in our life when we trust ourselves. So self-trust is really great for our health. Self-trust is really great for our health. One of the biggest, most chronic diseases of life and of living is stress, like long-term chronic stress. And a lot of that long-term chronic stress is connected to not living the life you're supposed to live. And when I say supposed to, I don't mean status quo supposed to. I mean you, yourself, your soul, your calling, your assignment, whatever you want to call it, what you are doing here on this earth, when you are not aligned in that and you are still just ping-ponging around and bouncing around with external validation, then you're actually creating a state of chronic stress in your body, that you're creating a chronic state of stress in your body, and it's not healthy. And one of the best things you can do with your health, and I've been talking about this on my podcast, is to be aligned in that sense of purpose. And when you have purpose, and then you align your physical, mental, and spiritual health with that purpose, you have flow state, you have alignment. Your life gets easier. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Your life gets easier. In the beginning, it may feel difficult because you may have some thresholds and some hurdles to get over that you've been so used to external validation. You've been so used to doing what you thought you were supposed to be doing. And there's this quiet piece of you that comes in and starts demanding your attention. that your life is not aligned, that maybe it looks great on paper, that maybe you did all the things you thought you were supposed to do. Maybe you're working a big corporate job and you've been climbing the corporate ladder and you've been more or less happy because you're getting this dopamine rush of reward as you do kind of things correctly, and then you get promoted and you get more opportunities, and maybe that's been great for you. And maybe that's fine, but maybe you're starting to live a little misaligned within that job.
Hey, this is Dr. Amy Lindsey, your host of Welcome to Your B-Side, your Midlife Metamorphosis YouTube channel and podcast. If you want to be more involved with my B-Side community, you can join on School. That's SKOOL. You can join my school community. Look me up, Dr. Amy Lindsey. Welcome to your B-Side and request to join.
So in that job, you can find purpose, perhaps. So I'm not advocating everybody go quit their jobs, okay? But maybe that is a desire of yours. So I'm an entrepreneur. I run a medical practice. I run a life coaching practice, basically. And I'm doing my podcast. I'm doing all this stuff. And this requires me for everything to come from inside of me. Nobody has hired me. I'm my own boss. And many of you might be entrepreneurs yourself. You're your own boss. And there is nothing better for self-healing than being an entrepreneur. I am not kidding. That in real time, you're out there making decisions in the marketplace based on your own intuition, your own instincts, your own ideas, right? And seeing if they connect, right? And then when people say no to you, or, you have to go back to your own self-trust and you can't get swayed. There is so much power also when you are an entrepreneur and you're not taking people's money and you're saying no to them because they're not aligned. They're not an aligned client. There's so much power in that. And when you are listening to yourself and you're making decisions in alignment, then yes, that next door does open. So I always say this, the risk, so people are risk adverse, right? I talked about why self-trust is so hard sometimes because we don't want to fall flat on our face. We don't want to look like an idiot. We don't want to fail and make mistakes and have that shame kicked up that we are then in this shame cycle with ourselves publicly and being embarrassed, right? So we rather just go with the external validation and the status quo because it seems so much safer. But I am telling you, when you listen to yourself and you make some of those first decisions from self-trust, those doors start flinging wide open. When you start closing doors with people, jobs, opportunities that are not aligned for you, and you start saying yes towards the ones that are, your life, it's like the things you desire and you want in your life, it speeds it up. Does that make sense? So this is a podcast about saving time. Inadvertently, this is a podcast about saving time. So there's something I use called Dr. Amy Math. And all of my clients know this. The second I call anybody out and I say, Dr. Amy Math, then they know what I mean. So I'm going to let you know what I mean. And honestly, I think I've talked about this on another podcast, but it's worth repeating. So Dr. Amy Math is this. When you take the time and the energy for yourself to do things like meditate, go for a walk and clear your head, listen to podcasts that you enjoy that add value to your life. When you read, and I don't mean just reading fiction, although I love reading fiction. Don't get me started. I love a good book, right? But you read and study books that are bringing value to your life and giving you ideas. When you take the time to soak in a bath, when you take the time to grieve, when you take the time to do all those self-care things for yourself, when you take the time for movement, to make yourself a nice, nourishing meal, it feels like people don't have the time for that. I get this all the time because I mostly work with high achieving women who are entrepreneurs, corporate executives, that kind of thing. They always say, I don't have time for that. And I say, Dr. Amy Math, So here's the math. The more time you spend caring for yourself, slowing down and listening to your intuition and just allowing yourself to be present, that is the only way you get new ideas. And when you sit down to do your work, guess what? It's rapid. It is fast. There is no sitting down at the computer and going through the slog. There's no overworking. There's no difficulty making decisions, that you are so in tune that you are just rapid fire. So self-trust saves time. Absolutely. So I do not want to hear from anyone ever that they don't have time to take care of themselves. Because if you don't, you're not setting boundaries. You're not setting boundaries, healthy boundaries at your work. You're not setting healthy boundaries in your personal life. You're not setting healthy boundaries with yourself. You're not setting healthy boundaries with yourself. That if you truly have goals and dreams and accomplishments, if you're really trying to build a business, if you're trying to get out of corporate and build something new, if you're trying to tap into that creative self and you're trying to write a book, write your memoir, you're trying to write songs or learn an instrument, or you're painting or you're a photographer and you have these projects you want to do. If you are not taking care of yourself and you are not having those moments of peace and that white space and that calm and that presence, and if you are not nourishing your body and moving your body and doing all the things you need to do for your health, you're actually slowing yourself down. You're actually slowing yourself down. You want to save time. Spend tons of time and energy taking care of yourself. And that self-trust will just line right up. That intuition, that inner knowing is just like, just lines right up, and you get into that flow state so that when you are working and you are contributing to the world and you are doing your job or you're, doing your art, it is so rapid fire and so like spot on exactly what you need to be doing, and you save time. Okay. So I want to just highlight a few things. First of all, what voice are you listening to? Is it your inner critic? Is it a parent? Is it an authority figure from your past or current, present? Or is it your higher self? Self-trust saves time, because when you close those doors and you say no to opportunities and people and work that is not aligned, and you trust to close that door, those other doors open. Also, when another way to access that self-trust and that inner knowing is by slowing down and by taking care of yourself, taking pristine care of yourself, making sure every day you're doing those things that bring you peace of mind, that bring you into the present moment for that inspiration to come through. And the last thing I want to say is that when you do go about hiring mentors, or if you are a mentor for someone else, or if you are a leader in any leadership role in any way, shape, or form, your best bet and your best tool is to encourage self-trust in the people you're working with. If you're a leader in a corporation, if you are a manager, your employees or your team, the more self-trust that you build in them, the better the work and the projects and the goals that you're trying to achieve will come to fruition. And why? Because first of all, anyone who's not aligned, they'll quit or leave, right? The people who are aligned and that can keep doing this work, the project takes on a whole new level. And where you thought you were going, you might end up somewhere else and you might end up in a better place. But that if you are symbiotic in your team, where you have your own self-trust and you are absolutely developing that in the people that you are leading, everything works out better. So self-trust for your health, to save time, and for whatever you're doing with your work and your career. Win, win, win. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Welcome to Your B-Side. I'm Dr. Amy Lindsey, and I'll be back next week with more. Bye.
This has been another episode of Welcome to Your B-Side, your midlife metamorphosis with Dr. Amy Lindsey. Be sure to follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.